5 key pension news items. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay informed about the latest pension news. Let's start with the 5th news item. UK pensions update. Major shifts in lifetime allowance rules. In a significant announcement, the Autumn Statement unveiled the abolishment of the Lifetime Allowance, LTA, starting from April 6, 2024, which was dubbed as L-Day. A comprehensive finance bill, released on November 29th, contained the legislation to implement this change, with an extensive 100-page portion dedicated entirely to pensions. Understanding the intricacies of these upcoming tax amendments is no easy task. Practitioners particularly face a challenge due to varying definitions of key terms such as relevant lump sum and relevant benefit crystallization event, depending on the specific tax allowance being considered. HMRC provided some clarity on these matters through subsequent guidance issued on December 20th. Here, we delve into the key areas surrounding these changes. 1. Pensions. No capital limit. The new legislation removes pensions from the application of the capital limit. 2. Introduction of new lump sum allowances. The changes bring about 2 new tax allowances. A. Pension commencement lump sum. B. Pension commencement excess lump sum, PCEs. The rules regarding these allowances will have certain limitations and requirements, such as being subject to the availability of lump sum allowance, LSA, and lump sum death benefit allowance, LSDBA. 3. Transition provisions. Evaluating previous BCs. Valuing pensions and lump sum benefits already in payment before L-Day poses challenges in implementation. This includes reconciling differences between old-style BCE statements reflecting percentage usage of the lifetime allowance, LTA, and the new focus on actual lump sum amounts. Additional complexities arise in considering lump sums versus pension values under the new regulations. Transitional provisions presented in the Finance Act 2024 address the treatment of pre-existing benefit crystallization events, BCEs. Notably, these provisions will be included in a schedule within the Finance Act itself, rather than as separate clauses in current legislation. Determining the total amount of LSA consumed by pre-L-Day BCEs offers 2 alternative methods. A. Default method. Deduct 25% of the aggregate value crystallized by pre-L-Day BCEs, adjusted to account for changes in the LTA over time. Real data method. If a member possesses a valid transitional tax-free amount certificate showing the total tax-free lump sums claimed under the pre-2024 system, this certificate can be utilized instead of the default calculation. This approach is beneficial for cases where a member decided against converting their defined benefit DB pension into a tax-free lump sum. Individuals can apply for a transitional tax-free amount certificate from any registered pension scheme they are a part of. The application process involves submitting comprehensive evidence of previous lump sum withdrawals. Upon receipt, the scheme administrator has 3 months to issue the certificate or notify the individual of a refusal. Practical considerations may arise, especially if the scheme issuing the certificate differs from the one that made the lump sum payment. 2024, the year that redefines UK pensions. What's changing? In 2024, dramatic changes are on the horizon for pensioners in the UK, bringing both excitement and uncertainty. One of the most significant alterations is the increasing state pension by 8.5% in April, as promised through the triple lock commitment. This boost elevates the full new state pension to £221.20 weekly and the basic state pension to £169.50 weekly. However, amidst this positive news, the government plans to abolish the Pension Lifetime Allowance, LTA, from April 2024. Currently set at £1,073,100, the LTA acts as a cap on total pension savings. Its elimination is welcomed by those with substantial pension pots, but requires careful maneuvering within the complex web of rules surrounding this change. Introducing political uncertainty, there is the possibility that the Labour Party, if they assume power, might reinstate the allowance, adding a layer of ambiguity to future planning. Additionally, a consultation on implementing a pension pot for life is underway, seeking to enable workers to maintain a single pension pot during job transitions. However, the practical implementation of this program is not expected in the immediate future. Further alterations include adjustments to auto-enrollment, lowering the age of eligibility from 22 to 18, and removing the lower earnings limit for pension contributions. These modifications aim to benefit women and part-time workers, yet the specific timeline for their implementation remains unclear. Lastly, the government has extended the deadline for purchasing voluntary national insurance contributions until April 5, 2025. Simultaneously, plans are being developed to establish an online platform to streamline this process. This wave of changes reflects a broader transformation within the UK's financial landscape. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has outlined plans to revitalize the IPO market, restructure pension scheme investments, and bolster the retail market. Notably, the Long-Term Investment for Technology and Science initiative will invest £250 million to encourage pension funds to support UK science and technology companies. The upcoming year is laden with significance for UK citizens in terms of retirement planning, with the imminent alterations promising to reshape the pension landscape for millions. Pension scams. Victims face potential new tax challenges. In 2011, Jeremy Cornford, an insurance broker, made what he believed to be a smart decision for his £96,000 retirement savings. Encouraged by a work colleague and a registered financial advisor, he invested the money into the Portman pension scheme, known as one of the ARC funds. Led by Stephen Ward, a former government pensions advisor, Cornford was enticed by the prospect of improved investment returns. Assured that there would be no tax implications, he thought his financial future was secure. Fast forward over a decade, and Cornford, along with several thousand others, finds himself facing devastating financial consequences. These individuals had invested in various so-called pension liberation schemes, primarily active between 2006 and 2014. Many are now being slapped with tax bills amounting to tens of thousands of pounds. Some have even been warned of potential demands for 55% tax on their entire invested sums, or possibly more. The total sought by authorities is estimated to reach tens of millions of pounds. In November, the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Investment Fraud urged HM Revenue and Customs, HMRC, the UK's tax authority, to revise its approach to these cases. MPs and peers argued that HMRC was unfairly persecuting the victims instead of holding the scheme promoters accountable. The victims maintain that they were never informed about the tax implications associated with these complex schemes. Typically, the schemes involved loaning funds to other investors and investing the remainder in risky, illiquid assets, such as Brazilian forestry land or Dubai parking lots. Victims reported losing all of their investments, except for any money they received back as loans. Cornford describes HMRC's pursuit of him and other scheme participants as a national disgrace. Already having paid £30,000 in tax, he now faces the possibility of even higher sums following a tax tribunal ruling in March. Cornford and others are caught in financial limbo, unable to commit to any long-term plans while waiting for the impending tax bills. One affected individual, Sue Flood, fears a bill of £126,000 or more. She transferred £230,000 from her BBC pension and her partner's private pension to the ARC scheme. Flood's frustration stems from her thorough efforts to verify the legitimacy of ARC before committing. Even during the transfer process, she grew concerned and attempted to halt it. Flood views HMRC's actions as victim-blaming. HMRC, on the other hand, asserts that its tax bills are not taxing money lost to misconduct, but rather unauthorized early transfers from pension funds. The authority acknowledges the financial losses suffered by individuals, but maintains its duty to tax amounts individuals release illegally from their pensions. Between 2006 and 2014, pension liberation schemes were marketed as legitimate and tax-free methods for savers to access their pension funds before reaching the age of 55. Many participants were enticed by the promise of better investment returns. The relaxed rules from HMRC allowed numerous failed schemes to gain formal registration as pension funds. This registration convinced many victims of the scheme's legitimacy. Thousands of individuals participated, resulting in asset transfers of at least £100 million. Almost all of these schemes breached standard pension rules. In the case of the ARC funds, management was transferred to Dalriada trustees in 2011 due to irregularities such as transfers to a travel agent and an unregistered company in Cyprus. Stephen Ward, who introduced many members to the ARC schemes, was banned in 2016 from acting as a pension fund trustee due to severe misconduct and capability failures. Requests for comment sent to Ward on social media were unanswered. According to Margaret Snowden, the chair of the Pension Scams Industry Group, the tax bills issued so far primarily relate to sums schemes had paid out to victims. For instance, Jeremy Cornford's £30,000 tax bill represents the amount he received as a £43,000 payment from ARC. The tax bill consisted of £24,000 in taxes and £6,000 in interest. While Snowden acknowledges that HMRC has the legal authority to demand these sums, she suggests it is tragic that the authority is targeting individuals instead of pursuing the scammers and seizing their assets to compensate for the tax losses. One individual, identified as Andrew, faced a significant bill after transferring his £174,000 pension pot to the Salmon Enterprises scheme in exchange for a £140,000 loan. HMRC demanded £89,000 for the loan, while the amount he invested in the scheme vanished. Andrew had to borrow from his family to cover the bill. He is especially frustrated that his previous pension provider failed to recognize that the pensions regulator had already prohibited Tudor Capital Management, trustees of the Salmon scheme, from managing pensions due to suspicions of criminal activities. Though HMRC claims it is not taxing money lost due to misconduct, individuals invested in ARC schemes have received letters warning them of bills based on larger sums than the ones taxed to date. The letters, from Dalriada trustees, are a result of the March Tax Tribunal ruling. The tribunal's complex decision granted HMRC the authority to tax participants on any funds lent to others within the scheme. The taxable amount could encompass the entirety of the investor's transferred money, and in some cases, even exceed that sum. The final tax bills have yet to be determined, and victims like Sue Flood find the calculations to be perplexing. Cornford fears he may face a 55% tax on the remaining £96,000 he invested, or potentially even more, with additional interest costs. Sir Stephen Timms, the Labour MP and chair of the UK House of Commons Work and Pensions Committee, expresses dismay at the plight of those affected. Timms supports the APPG's work on investment fraud and suggests that HMRC needs to approach these cases with discretion. Unfortunately, it appears unlikely that HMRC will change its current approach. An insider familiar with the authority's thinking reveals that HMRC considers it their duty to collect the owed tax in the ARC cases. Cornford states that he constantly feels an impending sense of doom from the sword of Damocles hanging over him. Living in perpetual fear, he dreads the day the tax bill arrives, and he must face the consequences. Snowden points out the fundamental injustice faced by individuals who were simply seeking the best retirement outcome possible and laments their current predicaments. Why I embrace high risk with my pension investments, an insider's perspective. Once upon a time, in the era of King Charles II in the 1670s, the UK's first organized pension scheme was introduced for Royal Navy officers. While this bit of trivia may interest pub quizzers, the question remains, why do we not take more risks with our pension investments? Investment principles dictate a trade-off between risk and return. In simpler terms, the higher the risk, the higher the potential reward. However, in the UK, there seems to be a problem. People have limited savings for their pensions, and they possess a reduced appetite for risk when it comes to investing their pension funds. During my 20s, I worked as a trader for investment banks such as Lehman Brothers and Nomura in the city. Subsequently, I became a chartered accountant at PwC. Thanks to these opportunities, I was able to build a substantial pension fund. I ensured that my personal contributions were maximized through the firm's matching contribution scheme. However, it is important to note that these were defined contribution pension schemes, meaning that the result at retirement depends on the fund's investment performance and my choices. In my 30s, I decided to change careers and become a teacher. The Office of National Statistics 2022 data reveals that the average salary for a teacher, £38,982, is lower than the UK average salary across all professions, £39,966. Despite the lower pay, the teacher's pension scheme is nothing to scoff at. As a teacher, our schools contribute a generous 23.6% of our pay towards the cost of the benefits provided. This means we receive an index-linked, government-backed annual pension based on our average career earnings. In simple terms, it is a defined benefit pension scheme that guarantees a lifelong income based on our salary. However, what about my separate private pension pot that falls under the defined contribution category? Considering I still have at least 3 decades until retirement, I have chosen to adopt a high-risk investment strategy. With such a long time horizon, my pension investments include riskier emerging markets, speculative assets, and individual volatile stocks like Apple, Tesla, and Google. I am aware that I have the capacity to withstand greater losses and ride out the ups and downs of international markets. In 2023, the Institute for Fiscal Studies reported that 7 out of 8 working people in the UK are not saving an appropriate amount for their pensions. Most of them save less than 15% of their earnings, which aligns with Lord Turner's Pensions Commission recommendations. Shockingly, almost 1/5 of private sector employees of working age do not save for their pensions, and less than 1 in 5 self-employed workers are saving for retirement. There seems to be a cynicism surrounding pension savings, possibly stemming from a fundamental misunderstanding of their purpose. Simply put, pension plans are tax-sheltered savings accounts for retirement. Unfortunately, as a nation, we have massively underinvested in our future. Many of us are unknowingly heading towards a demographic pensions time bomb. While there is a need for government intervention to change societal attitudes towards pension saving, we must also examine our attitudes towards managing our current pension pots. With persistently high inflation, eroding the value of savings, and the state pension being insufficient to maintain pre-retirement standards of living, most people cannot afford to avoid taking some measured risks. Ultimately, the main goal of a pension is to provide enough money for us to live the life we desire in retirement. The right combination of different investments can help us navigate market fluctuations and steadily grow our pension funds. It should be noted that pension plans themselves are not inherently risky. The risk arises from our investment choices. Even pensioners and those nearing retirement age might be able to afford a bit of risk. Many opt for lifestyle funds, which invest in lower-risk options, such as cash. However, if you want to expose your pension to market fluctuations without the need to select individual stocks, there are options available. Tracker funds come to the rescue in such situations. These passive or index funds simply track the overall performance of a particular market or index. Over the long term, shares tend to outperform cash. Therefore, investing in a world tracker fund or a U.S. equity fund can provide a taste of market exposure. Of course, negative performance is always a possibility, but the markets also offer the opportunity for your pension investments to outpace inflation and provide an additional boost. Risk should not always be viewed as the enemy. IFS warns, pensioners could bear the cost of Labor's proposed tax cuts. The Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, has issued a warning that pensioners could face financial difficulties if Labor decides to cut taxes for working individuals. The director of the IFS, Paul Johnson, explained that if Labor wishes to reduce income tax or national insurance, they would need to raise taxes elsewhere. One option highlighted by Johnson is to cut tax relief on pension contributions, which would mean that workers could save less money in their pension funds without being taxed. Additionally, IFS research suggests that owners of more expensive homes could face higher council tax bills, impacting many pensioners who reside in larger, more valuable properties. Furthermore, inheritance tax rules could be tightened, making it more challenging for the elderly to pass down wealth to their families without incurring a levy. Johnson stressed that Labor has several choices to consider, including increasing council tax on expensive properties, reforming capital gains tax, closing inheritance tax loopholes, or reducing tax relief on pensions. Recent reports indicated that the shadow chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is contemplating a promise to reduce income tax or national insurance in Labor's election manifesto. However, the IFS warns that implementing these plans without raising other taxes would result in an imbalanced national budget. Johnson explains that with limited fiscal headroom and strained public services, tax increases would likely be necessary. He emphasized that when discussing tax cuts, Labor may be referring to cuts offsetting larger tax increases, rather than an overall reduction in taxes. Labor had previously discussed increasing taxes on private schools and non-DOMs, but these changes would not generate enough funds to finance income tax or national insurance cuts. According to HM Revenue and Customs, a 2p cut to the basic rate of income tax in 2025 to 26 would cost the Treasury almost £14 billion. The IFS suggests that a potential £15 billion could be raised by reducing relief on pension contributions to the level of basic income tax. However, this approach risks negatively impacting millions of workers' retirement savings. Labor's announcement of income tax cuts without a balanced budget could lead to a situation similar to the fallout from the Liz Truss mini-budget in September 2022. The mini-budget initially proposed borrowing £28 billion for investment in net zero projects, but plans were swiftly scaled back due to an unexpected rise in inflation and subsequent surge in interest rate expectations. Labor leader Sir Keir Starmer has previously stated that the party will not rush to increase spending due to the country's financial state. Johnson emphasized that there is less room for public spending cuts compared to 2010, when Chancellor George Osborne reduced state spending to address the deficit. As a result of Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's autumn statement, Britain's public services are already set to face real terms funding cuts.